Oh, Canada, you sneak! Hey there, eh? Let's talk about Canada, land of maple syrup, hockey, and surprisingly aggressive military plans. Yes, you heard that right. Those peace-loving Canucks once plotted to invade the good old US of A. Don't worry, it wasn't a recent thing. We're talking about the 1920s, a simpler time when flapper dresses and bathtub gin were all the rage. But behind the politeness and moose-related apologies, Canada was secretly harboring plans for a full-blown invasion. Now you might be thinking, Canada? Invade? Those guys wouldn't hurt a fly, and you'd be mostly right. But history, like a mischievous raccoon in your attic, is full of surprises. So buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to dive into the wild world of Defense Scheme Number 1, Canada's plan to conquer the United States. Picture this, it's the roaring 20s. Jazz music is playing, people are dancing the Charleston, and Canada is secretly plotting to take over key American cities. Their master plan? Defense Scheme Number 1. Now, this wasn't some half-baked scheme scribbled on a napkin. This was a detailed military operation, complete with maps, troop movements, and everything. The goal? Seize control of major U.S. cities along the border, disrupt American infrastructure, and hold them hostage until reinforcements arrive from their trusty allies across the pond, the British. Think of it as a politely aggressive hostile takeover with a side of poutine. Some of the prime targets included Seattle, Spokane, Portland, Great Falls, Fargo, Minneapolis, Detroit, Niagara Falls, and Albany. Basically, if it was close to the border and had a Tim Hortons, it was on the hit list. Okay, maybe not Tim Hortons, but you get the idea. Now, before you start building a wall out of maple syrup and hockey pucks, let's understand why Canada felt the need to draft up this invasion plan. It wasn't just because they were bored with being nice all the time. Okay, maybe a little bit. But there were some legitimate historical reasons behind their paranoia. You see, Canada and the US have a bit of a complicated past. We're talking wars, border disputes, and even a conflict known as the Pork and Beans War. Yes, you read that right. Apparently beans were a big deal back then. These past conflicts left some Canadians feeling a tad insecure about their southern neighbors. So, Defense Scheme Number 1 was their way of saying, hey America, we're adorable and all, but don't underestimate us. We've got moose, we've got winter, and we're not afraid to use them. But wait, there's more. Turns out Canada wasn't the only one with invasion plans up their sleeve. Oh no, the US had their own secret scheme, aptly named War Plan Red, because nothing says subtlety like naming your war plan after a color associated with danger. This plan, developed in the 1930s, was America's way of countering a potential British attack. And what better way to stick it to the Brits than by invading their beloved Canada? It's like sibling rivalry, but with more tanks and less hair-pulling. War Plan Red involved capturing Halifax, seizing control of Niagara Falls hydroelectric plants, because who needs light, right? And attacking major Canadian cities like Montreal, Quebec City, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. Basically, they were going for a full-on Canadian takeover. Section 5, A Tale of Two Plans, comparing the unthinkable. So, there you have it. Two countries separated by a border and a shared love of hockey, both secretly planning to invade each other. It's like a romantic comedy, but with less kissing and more military strategizing. But how did these plans stack up against each other? Canada's defense scheme. Number 1 was all about speed and disruption. Get in, cause chaos, and hold out until help arrives. It was a bold plan, but relied heavily on the British coming to their rescue. The US, on the other hand, went for a more brute force approach with War Plan Red. Overwhelm the Canadians with sheer military might and take what they want. It was less subtle, but hey, when you've got a bigger army, who needs subtlety? In the end, both plans were products of their time, fueled by historical tensions and a healthy dose of paranoia. But thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, and neither plan ever saw the light of day. Section 6, All's Well That Ends Well, the plans that never were. Now before you start panicking and stocking up on maple syrup and firearms, let's be clear. Neither of these invasion plans ever came close to being implemented. They were contingency plans, dusty old documents locked away in some government vault, gathering dust bunnies and bad memories. Why weren't they put into action? Well, for starters, both countries realized that invading your neighbor and closest ally was probably not the best look. Plus, there was that whole World War II thing that came along and kind of shifted everyone's priorities. You know, fighting actual Nazis and all that. So, while it's fun to imagine a world where Canada and the US went head-to-head in a battle for North American supremacy, the reality is far less dramatic. These plans serve as a reminder of a bygone era, a time when tensions were high and trust was low. Section 7. From Foes to Friends. The evolution of US-Canada relations. Thankfully, the US and Canada have come a long way since the days of secret invasion plans. Today, the two countries enjoy one of the closest and most peaceful relationships in the world. We're talking shared borders, intertwined economies, and a mutual love of hockey that transcends even the fiercest rivalry. We share more than just a border. We share values, culture, and a love for complaining about the weather. We're like siblings who bicker and borrow each other's clothes, but deep down, we've always got each other's backs. But, like any good relationship, it hasn't always been smooth sailing. There have been disagreements, trade disputes, and the occasional diplomatic spat, but through it all, the US and Canada have managed to maintain a strong and stable relationship, proving that friendship, like a good cup of Tim Hortons coffee, can stand the test of time. Section 8. Canuck Concerns, Modern Tensions, and the Annexation Joke. Now, before we get too sentimental, let's address the elephant in the room, or should we say, the moose on the hockey rink. Despite the strong bond between the US and Canada, there have been some recent bumps in the road. Remember that whole annexation thing a certain former US president liked to joke about? Yeah, not cool, dude. While most Canadians took it as a bad joke, it did raise some eyebrows and sparked a few nervous laughs. I mean, it's one thing to playfully tease your neighbor about their love of Celine Dion, but suggesting you might just, absorb their entire country, that's crossing a line even for a country known for its bold foreign policy moves. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, and the annexation talk faded faster than a Canadian tan in February. But it did serve as a reminder that even the strongest of friendships require constant nurturing and a healthy dose of respect. Section 9. Friends Forever? The future of the Great White North and the Star-Spangled Banner. So, what does the future hold for the US and Canada? Will we finally bury the hatchet, or at least agree on a common currency so we can stop doing that awkward exchange rate math at the duty-free shop? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, the US and Canada are in this together, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health. Okay, maybe not that last part, but you get the idea. We're stuck with each other, and honestly, there are worse countries to be stuck with. So, let's raise a glass or a can of Labatt Blue to the enduring friendship between the US and Canada. May our future be filled with peace, prosperity, and just enough good-natured ribbing to keep things interesting. After all, what's life without